And the nation and the million faces formed together, made for elevation. And the soldier won't surrender. Faith is like a fire that never burns to embers. The voice of the unheard. Love is the answer.
I gotta speak it, believe it, that's how I feel inside.
I can't sit here quiet.
You can take my heart, you can take my breath when you pry it from the cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Sleeping and the shadows could be making history. Through the fire, on the water, used to be a slave, but now you are a conqueror.
They can take my heart, they can take my breath when they pry it from the cold dead chest.
This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. We're rising up, rising up, we're rising up, rising up, we're rising up. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us. This is how we rise up. Heavy as a hurricane, louder than a freight train. This is how we rise up. Heart is beating faster, feels like thunder. Magic static, call me a fanatic. It's our world, they can never have it. This is how we rise up. It's our resistance, you can't resist us.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another special edition of Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. We have a very special guest with us tonight. A lot has been going on, and I think this is the man that most of us want to hear from. So I will bring him on without further ado. We have the police chief of the city of Meriden, Chief Roberto Rosado. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
I am doing extremely well. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to have you here. A lot of people have a lot of questions for you. But before we jump into that, I'm going to give you the floor, and I want you to talk about anything you need to and give a brief introduction.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, I want to thank you for hosting me and giving me the opportunity to speak to your audience and obviously all our community members. As you know, I came over from Willimantic after spending 23 and a half years there in Willimantic. My last 4 years as chief of police. I have an extensive background in this field, expertise. You know, I went through the ranks. My last 4 years, I was chief of police in Willimantic. You know, I obtained my associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and master's degree from the University of New Haven with a concentration in management. I also attended the FBI Academy in 2015. So I consider myself an expert in this field. I also have a command staff that has over 100 years of law enforcement experience that I rely on, because I obviously don't have all the questions to every answer. And that's why we have a great team in place. And collectively, we do get the answers, and we usually get the answers right. So I want to thank you for having me, and I'll answer any questions that you have, or people just want to have an open dialogue or discussion, I'm open to that as well.
Sure. So I have a ton of questions. For, I think that the biggest question that people are having out in the community today is, how are the police officers doing? You guys have been under attack for quite some time over the last couple of years. And we've been seeing things happening out in the public, even here in Meriden, with officers getting injured. How are you guys holding up through all this adversity that's being thrown at you?
So internally, the morale internally within the department, I think it's great. I think everyone's excited to see all these new officers that we've promoted recently, see how effective they are. They've already done a tremendous job. We're putting the right people in place. We still have a few more promotions to go. So everyone's excited internally. Obviously, we rely on our families outside of work to, take care of us when we're down a little bit. But externally, the external component is the tough part in law enforcement, especially in today's climate, not only nationally, but throughout the state. It's a tough environment to be a police officer. We are actually seeing numbers drastically drop in recruitment. When I first started in this career, you would probably have 500 to 1,000 people taking law enforcement exams and trying to get onto a department. And my recent conversation with Charlie Sherwood, who runs one of the testing sites, only had 60 individuals apply to an examination process. So that's certainly far too low, because that's 60 individuals that a number of agencies are trying to recruit. We're doing a great job at the police department, and internally it's a great environment, and a lot of people are hearing about how great it is, and we have external candidates from other departments wanting to come to the Meriden Police Department and work for us. We recently hired one from Yukon, two from Hartford. We have another 4 lateral transfers who are very diverse female candidates that are going to come over in the near future. So internally, it's great, but my concern is the external portion of the job. Obviously, those individuals left their departments because they're frustrated. 2 of those candidates left Hartford and are coming to us, and they've expressed the reasons why they left Hartford. I don't want the Meriden Police Department to become another Hartford Police Department or any other police department that people are not satisfied with. And sometimes they're not satisfied. It's not that they're not satisfied internally; it's the external stuff. You go to another agency and get paid a lot more money and not have to deal with a lot of the what's going on impacting the department, sort of like the CRB.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Hartford, because Hartford is one that launched a new CRB, and they have an internal one, and it's an investigative CRB, which is costing that city, who is broke, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's for a different show. But you mentioned that crime is down in the city of Meriden, and again, stats don't lie, and if you look at from 2018, they have this use of force committee that was put together, which is, again, just one step of one part of the overall plan for them on what they're trying to do to you guys, and that's city council, from what I'm talking about. But in 2018, over 45,000 calls of service you guys take, and use of force allegations 0.018 in 2019. 0.007 out of 51,000 calls. And then even last year, we had 2 for 0.004% with over 48,000 calls for service. And those were both withdrawn, so technically none. If you look at the stats from what you just said, over the last couple of years, is dropped, it gives citizens a moment to pause and say, hey, why are we doing this, and why are we going after you guys? Because you guys are out there apparently doing your job and doing it extremely well. Do you know is it just national, or do you think that people have? I want to try to stay away from the political stuff for you, because I know you have to deal with the external. You do personally, but at some point, do you have to throw your hands up and say, guys, why?
Well, you bring up a great point, because that's how the officers feel. and it is a national thing that's going on throughout the country. It's going on in the state. I talked to other chiefs. I know there's another chief. I won't mention his name or the department that's going through the same thing, and he's throwing up his hands in the air, and he's a great chief, and I respect that individual, and he's ready to call it quits. And it's unfortunate for the agency that he's a part of because he's a great leader. He's a great chief for that organization, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a lot of people just leave this profession or not wanting to come into this profession. I know there's another individual where his son wants to become a police officer, and he's trying to steer him away from becoming a police officer because of the climate that we're in. So it is going to hurt recruitment, and what happens when it hurts recruitment is you have to entice people to apply. And how do you entice people to apply? You have to increase salaries. You have to be creative to get people to apply. We're very fortunate here at the Marion Police Department that the environment internally is so great that people are talking about it. But my concern is there's only so much that we could do as administrative staff, as officers within the agency as well, because they help us with the recruitment. You know, we always rely on them to reach out to other individuals. We have a great recruitment team right now, and then their backs are going to be against the wall here probably in the near future, because if there's only 60 people applying for the state of Connecticut for a certain region, you may have 20, 25 departments trying to pry these individuals to their departments. And if we're not the highest paid agency, or we don't have the best benefits or the best retirement, those officers are not going to, the cream of the crop are not going to come here. So there are hidden costs associated with things that we do. So no matter what you do, there's consequences to it. And I understand what the consequences may be because I see it in other agencies. I've heard it from some Hartford officers that have come over. I don't want to be that agency. I think we're doing a great job internally. I think the community is satisfied. We recently received a report from Belen, who has a Zen City report that she provides us with. It kind of gauges what social media is saying about the Marion Police Department, and it's all been positive. And the only thing negative there was basically that our backs are against the wall, and the politics right now throughout the state and country affect our jobs. That was the only negative thing, but nothing negative towards the police department. So I'm grateful to the officers that go out daily and do a great job fighting crime, fighting through the adversity, and coming to work and always excelling, going above and beyond. I had recently had a nice email from a lady. Actually, I think I have it with me. Give me a second. I'll read it to you, just to show you what the officers do behind the scenes. And no one's looking for any. No one's really no officers looking for a pat on the back or anything. This is all. I didn't even know about this, and this grandmother wrote me this email. So if I could just give me a second, if I could read it to you.
Absolutely.
So I won't say her name because I didn't ask her to say, put this out there. But in this sad day and age of the police being bashed in the media every time you turn around, I wanted to let you know about how good our officers are in Meriden and give praise to one in particular. Allow me to tell you a wonderful story. Over the weekend, a knock came at my door when my grandson answered. An officer was there. The officer asked to see my oldest grandson. When my grandson came to the door, he saw Officer Carey standing there. Officer Carey said to him, "I have something for you. Hold on, let me get it to you." As he turned to our door, he was carrying a guitar case and said to my grandson, "This is for you." Upon opening the case, my grandson was speechless. You see, almost 2 years ago, Officer Carey was a reconstruction specialist who worked an accident that happened on Chamberlain Highway in which my grandson was almost killed. My grandson's name is so-and-so. Over the time he has spent time in Hartford Hospital, he and someone else spent many hours together. Over that time he spent in Hartford, he and the other person spent many hours together. Just about a year before our house had been broken into, my grandson's guitar was taken. It was a gift that he had received from his deceased mother. He was devastated. I am unsure whether Officer Carey was involved in that case, but I did hear him tell my grandson on that day, he brought the guitar to him, that he read the report at some point. Officer Carey told my grandson that the guitar had been given to him by his mother. And when his niece went off to college to a major music school, he had given it to her. She had graduated from college and worked now teaching and gave it back to him. He remembered what had happened to the individual grandson, his guitar. So he took the guitar to the music shop and had it cleaned up, tuned up, etc. He wanted the guitar to have a good home and decided it would be a good place for that individual. There are many amazing things about the story, but most amazing one is that the grandson had remnants of the guitar that had been stolen from him, smashed to pieces, left beside the dumpster at a pawn shop. And he painstakingly tried to fix it. It was not fixable, but he did piece what he could together. And when he laid the two guitars side by side, they were very identical. So this is a story that she shared, and then she just kind of continued on and said, "Thank you for taking the time to read this. I know you're very busy, but I felt this was important for you to know that how I feel about RPD. They really do care about our community." And to me, he truly proved it. So that's what the officers do behind the scenes.
And that is amazing. And again, you don't hear about all the great things they do. You only see it in the news when bad things are happening. But do you find that, and I know I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to get into the political stuff. Do you find all the things that are happening up at City Hall, are they affecting your day to day? Is it affecting the police officers day to day? Are they being a little bit more cautious of the things they do?
I mean, the officers have always been cautious. I wouldn't say they're being cautious or overly cautious now. Obviously, there was concerns with, the police accountability and how we do our job or how we're viewed, and that certainly comes across their minds. And I hear a lot from. I won't even mention our department. There's one officer in particular from another agency who I recently chatted with, and this kind of gives a sentiment to our department. And this individual has 18 years on. He's done a phenomenal job. I know every time that the administrative staff needs something done, they always go to this individual officer because he does a great job and does it well. This individual officer was recently approached to be a part of a traffic unit because of summer months and everything else going on, the ATVs. That individual, for the first time ever, told his administrative staff no. He told his administrative staff no because he doesn't want to be recorded or be looked at or, something being said or, have an encounter where now he's videotaped and put on YouTube or whatever the case is because someone dislikes law enforcement, whatever the case is. So he really wants to just write out his last 2 years and retire and go on to the sunset without a blemish to his career. And this individual is a tremendous officer. There is no blemish to his career. And he's going to go out on top. And it's unfortunate that he has a passion for law enforcement and he really can't complete his last 2 years in law enforcement because of the feelings he has about the way people feel about him or this profession. And I've heard that within our agency, it's, how they want us to do our job. And it's difficult to go out there. And I do hear it. Our supervisors are great. We try to keep everyone motivated and let them know that we have their backs as long as they're doing everything right and by the book. There's nothing to be concerned about. But I do understand that you have people that are far left and that will make something a right case, try to make it look wrong or say things that are wrong. I've seen that throughout my career. And many of the things I've seen, because they've been in the past, have been no issues. But nowadays, will it be an issue? Will they continue to push, or say that this was wrong? I don't know. It's a great question. Everything's being politicized now, as you know. That's a great concern of mine, is because if you politicize something and, this is a case where it's right, but because it's being politicized, they might want to make it look wrong or there's a lot of concerns throughout. There's a lot of concerns that the officers have, and rightfully so. You know, they have to go home. There's individual officers that are concerned that people will show up at their doorsteps. One incident in particular, the Hartford incident, the most recent one that they had with the officer-involved shooting, people were going to that officer's door. That was a justified shooting, and the officer didn't do anything wrong, and you have people going to the officer's house to protest. And that's the concern officers have. You know, it's not whether they're doing right or wrong. It's how they're being portrayed or and looked at.
Absolutely, and that's one of my main concerns. Again, if you're just joining us, we are joined tonight by Meriden own police chief, Chief Rosado, and he's here answering questions. And again, we appreciate you being here. But you just touched on a subject that I have been talking about for weeks, and that is that what's coming out of City Hall, one, is a false narrative that, unfortunately, like I say, the uninformed, and the ignorant are believing. And they really do think that there is issues with our police department. And I think some of the things coming out of City Hall, like the resolution, racism is a health crisis, where, I am still waiting on stats from our deputy mayor, who was here a couple weeks ago, who said that there are actual stats out there that says in one of the leading causes of death of black men in America is the police and the justice system. It just doesn't exist. But people hear that coming from people who have positions of power, and I think it really puts our officers, in a real predicament. And that really concerns me. It irritates me, which is why I have probably done at least a month of shows on the police department. I look at what happened in April with the 5 officers that got injured, and I think that is what is wrong with putting this kind of political garbage out there. When I say they're putting our officers' lives at risk, I truly believe to this day, and the more and more I read about what happened that night, that those officers did not take a shot through that windshield and stop that criminal because they're afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. All the things you just talked about, I think, are in the back of every officer's head, that they don't want to put their families at risk. They don't want to put themselves at criminal risk while trying to do the right thing. And that is extremely concerning to me.
No, you're absolutely right. That's in the back of their minds. And, they have families to go to. And that's why a number of senior members of the department are considering retirement here in the near future. I spoke to one in particular that I won't mention his name, but he mentioned to me he's going to, ride this out to see how the state goes, how this goes within the city, and he's going to make his decision. We have great talent at the Meriden Police Department, and I rely heavily on my veteran staff. I think you need good veteran leadership amongst the ranks to mold and shape the new officers. And without that, we're going to be in a crisis, because I'm upstairs, our administrative staff is upstairs. Who do we rely on to teach, mold, and teach these younger officers the right way to do things? We rely on our veteran staff. That's who they learn from. They don't learn from me. They don't learn from the deputy chiefs. They learn from our veteran staff, and we have to make sure that they're happy here at the Meriden Police Department, so we keep them as long as we can. We invested a lot of money and time into these officers, and to let them retire while they still have a lot left in the tank, it's kind of a disservice to the Meriden community, because I look at when I came on into law enforcement because of a lot of veteran Meriden police officers molded me and guided me to become a police officer. And I look at those individuals. Without them, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at. So I respect the time and service, the veteran leadership. I know what we have at the Meriden Police Department, and I hope we're able to retain these officers in some sort of fashion, because we truly need them. We need them to mold those young officers so they can lead the next generation for years to come.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on 99% of what you just said, other than one thing. One, I think we are in crisis mode right now. Some like to say, we could be in crisis. No, we are in crisis mode because what everything you just talked about is happening and happening now. Not only here, but all over the country. Police officers are getting out of the business because it's dangerous for them and it's putting them at liability for enormous amount of things. And I think what it does, and every taxpayer and every citizen of the city of Meriden and the country should be looking at this and thinking in the back of their heads, what is this going to do to my community? And what this is going to do to my community when these senior officers leave again, and they get good training from the state at the state police academy, but it takes years and years to learn this craft on how to deal with people and how to deal with certain situations. That experience is going to be gone, and I think that's just a recipe for disaster. That's when accidents happen. That's when missteps happen, and again, I think it creates a bigger divide in the community in the long run.
And I'll add to one thing to that. It's a first name basis with members in our community, with our veteran officers. They know each other like the back of their hands. So there's a big respect there when a veteran officer shows up to a scene and knows people. He could de-escalate a situation rather quickly because he knows what triggers individuals. He may know what that specific individual is dealing with. He may know family members. I know that from experience, and that's certainly a benefit to us that we have right now.
Yeah, so I think we could both agree the Meriden Police Department does an absolutely fabulous job, and they do. And so when I read things like from what happened yesterday, we have a gentleman in the city. Again, this is due to great police work from our Meriden officers, where they stopped the vehicle and he had $300,000 in cash, 7.1 grams of crack, 2 guns when the search warrant was done, all this stuff, and then he gets a $250,000 bond. Now, if that's not a slap in the face to every officer, because $2,500 and this guy's back out on the streets, and you have to deal with him all over again.
No, I agree, and I'll take that a step further because some of the individuals that we've encountered with the violence have had ankle bracelets on, have been in the system for some time. So it is frustrating, and I do understand that we're in a unique situation with a pandemic, but still, we have to do what's right and make our community safe. So we do need to create tougher laws and figure out ways to keep these individuals, one, away from firearms, away from our children, and away from our streets. So we're certainly doing our part. I could tell you since July 1, the officers, actually even before I came on, I know they've been doing an amazing job, but some of this violence increased when I first came on, and I could tell you they've probably seized over 50 firearms, probably arrested 60 individuals involved with firearms offenses or this violence. But I want to point out that those efforts are starting to show, because I want to knock on wood here, because we haven't had a shooting in quite some time. And I want to say it's been 2-3 weeks since we have any major incident. And that's a credit to the officers. They're staying on top of this. They know who the players are. It's only a matter of time before they get these players off the street, like this individual. People are on our radar, and they're taking the time. They're being obviously they're cautious on how they approach these individuals that are dangerous, but at the same time, they're doing their job and removing these guns and individuals off the streets.
And like I said, you guys are doing an amazing job at that. Now, when it comes to this, again, and we're going to end up having to do a little political stuff here. When it comes to this police survey that came out, this public safety and law enforcement, did you guys have any feedback for them when they created this?
So it's been that's a subcommittee within the committee that put that all together. We were not a part of the subcommittee.
So even the captain didn't have any say into what was going into these this survey? Because I look at this survey, again, I did a whole show on it. I find it very disturbing, some of the stuff they're asking. I think it's stuff that, they're trying to create a false narrative of what's going on. And
Right.
I'm hoping it backfires on them. I mean, just a second question right off the bat, do you believe Meriden police treat people of all races and ethnicities equally? Yeah, and because I don't think there's any proof other than that. So what they're looking for is people's feelings, and again, they're hoping to get enough people to sit there and say negative things about you guys that aren't true, and give them an opportunity to push that false narrative even further.
Yeah, so he wasn't a part of that subcommittee, but he did express, and my concerns that also has been that the people that created this are actually putting it out and collecting this data. So that's a concern, because you could also allow biases or whatever the case is. Who are we sending this out to? Are we sending this out to select groups only? How is this being administered? That's my concern. And if you know anything about collecting data and gathering information like this, whoever's putting it out should give it to another organization that has nothing to do with this committee and do the research, collect the information, however they want to collect it, and report back. That's a double-blind standard. It should be, developed by one group and then given to another group, so that way there's no biases in collecting the data or anything else. That's the way it should be done, and that's the right way to do things. So that certainly is my concern, and because I don't know who's gathering it, how it's being gathered, where it was sent out to, and if you're sending out a questionnaire form like this to certain organizations, that's concerning, because why aren't other organizations getting this?
I absolutely agree, and that's one thing I brought up, because I do know who's creating this, and I do know where they're sending it, and they're sending it to all organizations that agree with them. And I think they're doing a disservice to not only themselves, but again, they have an agenda, and I don't think anything else matters to them other than fulfilling their agenda. And this survey is going out to their friends, and I'm hoping it backfires on them. I don't think it probably will, but I think we're in for a bigger fight down the road. But you're absolutely right. It should be fair, and this is anything but. But so,
like I said, you received data, the information before from Belen, and that's unbiased. I didn't ask her to do that. She did it on her own, and people didn't even know that she gauged the temperature of what people were saying about the police department. That's a true unbiased report. Correct. Because no one was asked to do this. This was just the general temperature, gauging the general temperature of people in the community, what they were voicing on social media. So to me, that is fair. People didn't even know that obviously they were putting information out there, but she gathered it, collected it, and gauged the temperature. So that to me, that is accurate. And that's what we see on Facebook. We have a Facebook page that we have up, and it's nothing but positive things. I think I haven't seen anything negative on our Facebook page.
Well, I think they are making a gross miscalculation on people's feelings about the police department. And I think in the end of the day, this is all going to collapse on them and blow up in their face. But only time will tell on that, and hopefully we'll find out in November. But if you look at the CRB and some of the things that they want to put out for training-wise for the CRB, because obviously, again, you guys have, like you said at the beginning of the show, hundreds of years of experience, and then they want to bring in normal citizens that have absolutely no idea what doing police work really consists of. These are the people that are going to be watching over you guys and scrutinizing you guys, which I find extremely concerning. So how do you, and all these things that they want for training is going to come from manpower from you guys that I don't think, one, you guys have time to do, because especially with, we're still a little understaffed at the moment, but You guys don't have time to be doing 24 hours and then weeks of training CRB members.
You're absolutely correct. That's a cost. That's a hidden cost associated with this. If you remove someone from the road to do the training, it's going to require that officer to be backfilled. Let's say it's one of our training officers that has to do this, and he's on the road, and he's got to be removed from the road. You got to backfill that. So now you're compounding the problem. So sometimes you're paying for this, but then you're also creating overtime somewhere else to pay for that backfill. There's a lot of issues with this, and that's only one portion of it. My main concern is labor laws. Normal citizens don't understand government labor laws. They don't understand all that. So that's going to be another training component that has to come from an outside legal department, so they could understand labor laws. Because the minute an officer or an employee's rights are violated, I could see a lawsuit coming down the pike from that officer. They're not going to, if you leak out information or you do anything, that's going to take years to resolve. So there's going to be costs, whether we're saying there's going to be no cost or, New Haven has $100,000. I think that's low.
That's
but
really low.
That's New Haven. But there are many hidden costs. I mean, I think, and it's going to open up Pandora's box. People are going to just think that they could just use this as a way to open the floodgates to file frivolous lawsuits against the police department. And that's where it's going to tie us up. It's going to tie us up, our legal department. It's going to tie up officers in court or in hearings. It's going to tie us up. And when you tie us up, you're removing us from the road to be doing more productive things with our community and making our community safe.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned New Haven, and again, it is going to cost a lot more than $100,000 down there. But if you look at who heads that, and that is where I get really concerned that this is where, these civilian review boards go. They go political. If you look at who runs the New Haven, who is a full-time employee, is Emma Jones. And I don't know if you know who she is. Her son was Malik Jones, who decided to take police out. I grew up in East Haven, so I'm very familiar with the case. Where, Malik Jones took police officers from multi-districts all over 4 towns and then ended up getting shot as he tried running over a cop. But yet, and this is someone who totally anti-cop, and now you put her at a position to be watching over cops when she already has a political agenda, which she's proven she has over decades of marches and comments. So I can see where police should be a little worried. I'm afraid that's going to happen here.
Certainly, that's in the back of our minds, and that's one of the growing concerns that the officers have. They're thinking, okay, you're going to put people on this board that are far left and not understand, and regardless of what's right, they're still going to view it in their mind as wrong. We see it, you see it on social media, some of these protests. You're like, what are they protesting for when this is a totally justified situation? But they'll just do it to protest. And that's I think that's one of the major concerns that the officers have. There's going to be no trust with that, with the review board. There's going to be absolutely no trust. You're going to put someone on there with no experience and just anoint them as experts.
Honestly, Chief, I don't know how there is an ounce of trust between the police department and City Hall now. I honestly don't. And just the resolution alone that they passed, to me, if I was a police officer, I would be absolutely livid. I couldn't trust a single person up there. So I don't know how that's not in the back of your minds. I don't know what the conversations are between the police department and, again, public safety or even city council at a whole. I just don't know how you guys do it. It must be so frustrating. It must be a real contentious time, or is it not? Am I just not reading it right?
No, the officers were certainly very upset about that. I went to roll call that morning, and they were angry. They were spewing at me, not directed at me, but kind of letting me know how disgusted they were with the resolution, especially originally the first time around, and making it seem like law enforcement kills minority individuals. That's not the case in the city of Meriden. I grew up in the city of Meriden. I should have probably mentioned that. Uh, I grew up in the city of Meriden. I played in every park there. I rode my bicycle with my cousins to Stepperfield, from Stepperfield to Hubbard Park to go swimming in the summertime. We never had any issues. I've never witnessed anything. I always tell people I hung out with individuals that were white, black, Hispanic, every race possible, and never witnessed any bad encounter with a police officer. And that's why I became a police officer. So I have experience not only as a police chief in the city of Meriden and my experience somewhere else, but I grew up in the city that we're talking about. And my family on both sides, my mother's side and father's side, we never experienced anything bad. And we didn't live in the best places. I've lived on Crown Street, Hickory Street, where else? Woodland Street or Wood Street. I lived in the downtown area, and where the police are more involved in, because more criminal activity is downtown. Our house was burglarized when we were kids in two different locations, and we had a great response from the police department. We never had any bad experiences, or never were set back because of law enforcement, because of the education system in the city of Meriden. I was able to flourish because of the Meriden Police Department, people that were guiding me along the way. Many of the officers.
Well, I think that's still very true today. I mean, I think
It is.
most people, 99% of the people, still have great experiences with the police department. I mean, if you look at the overall, how many complaints are placed every year is nothing compared to how many calls of service they take. So I think that is that's attributed to the great work that the police officers do on a daily basis under extreme circumstances. But you know, I think we could both agree on it's not a healthy relationship in this city with the police department and city hall. But I do want to move on to things, because what are we going to do? I think the police department can do something, and you could be proactive. So let's talk about the violence that was going on in the city. We haven't had it in a couple of weeks. Is it because you guys are being that much more proactive now, or do you guys have a good sense of who's involved and you got like a net thrown over them that they're not going to go anywhere?
Well, I think it's we know who's part of the violence. We've known this for quite some time. The officers and detectives have been doing a tremendous job, and it's difficult because of the amount of violence that we've had. It's stretched our services. It's really made it hard for us to investigate cases, because when you start investigating one, now you're going out for another case. Okay, you start working on those two, then you're going out for another case. I think now that we've had some lulls in the last, actually since January 1, they've locked up a lot of individuals last year, towards the end of last year. And we continued some of those cases and gotten some warrants back, took people into custody. And as we're taking people into custody, more people are obviously seeing that and knowing that, okay, let's not, they know what's going on. They're being very proactive. And I'll give you one example. One individual was surprised to be apprehended and made mention that, the current way that we're cracking down on individuals, it's getting out to the other individuals part of the violence. And a lot of these individuals are either moving on or knowing that they're going to be apprehended. But I want to say that we apprehended probably a bulk of the individuals responsible for the crime. And obviously, we're not going to arrest them for every case that they committed, because it's difficult to bring charges on someone, especially when you have limited cooperation from other individuals, involved in the violence. But we're working hard, and we're doing our best to bring people into custody that are responsible for this. And I think you're seeing the lull right now as a result of how many people we've taken into custody. And I do provide a monthly report to all our all our community leaders, the mayor, our city council, Tim Coon. I provide a monthly report. I also share it with Holly Wills, and she shares it with all the community groups. Uh, Last month was 11 pages. That's what typically we do. So we're very forthcoming with information. We share all that information, all the great work that the officers doing, what's going on, any news related. We're out there. We're being very proactive, and we're open with our communication and dialogue with the community. And obviously, we do the quarterly reports that we showcase, to the Public Safety Committee. But I do provide a monthly report to all those members to let them know what's going on.
Well, you kind of walked me right into my next topic that I want to discuss, and that is community policing. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I was part of New Haven when they redid it, and I think it's a great model for what could be done up here in Meriden. I have been speaking about it for the last 5 years, so I'm gonna, now that I have your ear, you know, I'm gonna bring it forward. And again, I think that we have a broken system when it comes to community policing. I moved here in 2006. I started getting back involved in things in 2014, 2015. I needed a break. But I look at the way community policing is done here in the city, and I find a lot of flaws with it. And a lot of the flaws that I have is that there's no senior leadership actually doing the community policing oversight. And when I talk about that, I mean actually going to the meetings and actually providing this information. It's just NI officers. And NI officers do serve a purpose, but I believe at the end of the day, it needs to be leadership that is taking the bull by the horns, and I don't think that's happening here. And I think it's because of two reasons. One, there's way too many neighborhood associations. There's over 30, I think 32 or 33. And the problem is most of them aren't active because there's no membership, or there's maybe one or two people that show up. I think, again, I don't know if you're familiar with the New Haven model, but it's broken down into policing district, and it gets more community involvement. Because from what you said earlier, where you don't get the cooperation from the neighborhoods, and is that still a huge problem in the city when it comes to investigating these gun violence and stabbings or whatever it is?
So let me clarify. So we get great cooperation from the community, from witnesses that are not involved in it. Sometimes where the lack of cooperation comes from are the intended targets, because they're also part of some of the violence that is going on throughout the city. These individuals are targeting each other, so they're responsible for some of the crime as well, and the uptick in the gun violence. So that's where it's difficult to get cooperation, sometimes from people that are intended targets. But we are getting great cooperation from our community and people within these areas where it's happening. They do provide us with great video or surveillance from their homes. We've solved a number of crimes that way, but the lack of cooperation is not from the community itself. It's mostly from individuals that are intended targets or intended victims in that particular case that may be part of the violence somewhere else, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if we're getting the cooperation from them, I think we need to get those people in the same room. And I don't think you can do that with having 32, 33 different neighborhood associations. Have you ever thought about bringing it to a more district-based and having a district manager who is a lieutenant or that would be overseeing it? I just think something drastic needs to happen.
Well, it's funny that you said this, because it seems like you were just in our conversation yesterday. I had a conversation with both of our deputy chiefs, and moving forward, we're going to come up with a plan and discuss this, because right now our community policing, our NI units are down because we have a number of officers get injured. We have a number of officers that are in training that are not certified yet to go on the streets. So we've had a little bit of an impact here, and we're trying to address some of the overtime and the costs associated with having a number of officers down. So my discussion yesterday was basically discussing the same thing that we're discussing right now. So If you have some ideas, I'd love to hear from you. We could sit down and discuss it. But I've thought about all this, and I do want to take our community policing to a new level. I do want to do more with our community, and it's not just going to meetings and stuff like that. I think we have to host events. We have to be out there. We have to do some fun things with the community. So whether it's like a certain section or sector within the community, and go out there and do something in that group or within that community, and then maybe a couple weeks later do something in another area where we're bringing out kids, very diverse populations to come together to interact with the police department. That's my goal, and that's how we branch out and reach out to everyone, and we get everyone to get along, and not only get along, but work well with the police department and build a trust. So obviously, it's been difficult this year because we were in a pandemic, and I've had a lot of ideas coming in, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to implement some of these things because we were in a pandemic. But now that we're coming out of it, our efforts are going to be much stronger.
Yeah, I think if the city hall wanted to do a subcommittee, this would be what they should be doing a subcommittee on. How do you get the public? Because again, I read all the material that came through the use of force committee, and from other towns and other cities, their recommendations were you have to have community involvement. They have to be engaged. Well, the use of force and a CRB is not going to do that. Anything that's real serious doesn't even get done by the CRB. It gets done up at the state police and the state attorney's office when it comes to violent stuff from police officers. But I think if somebody wants to put a committee together, this is the committee that should be formed. Listen, you have a lot on your plate. I'm sure. I'm sure City Hall has a lot on their plate. There's plenty of people in the community that are more than willing to step up and help create something that I think is viable and would turn it to a more productive and efficient community neighborhood association. I just think the system we have now is broken, and I think it just needs to be done sooner than later. I think it's an opportunity for the police department to show that they're being proactive, because again, we're not going to like anything that comes out of this use of force committee. No police officer is going to like what comes out of it. And in fact, I think that a majority of the citizens of Meriden are not going to like what comes out of it. And I think, again, this is where I find that it's going to backfire on them. But that doesn't mean we can't be proactive. And I'm always for being proactive. And I think we have an opportunity here, since the discussions being had. Let's do it. I think something drastic needs to be changed so that people, especially in City Hall, can't sit there and say, well, we have to do it because the police department doesn't want to.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think the time is right, especially now that we're coming out of a pandemic and we're going to be able to get back out there and meet with these community groups and be more interactive with our community. I think the timing is right because now we've kind of downed our NI unit. So why not bring it back and reshape it? I think the timing is right. I'm willing to listen to you and to see what you have, your ideas, and I'm willing to listen to anyone else within the community. I have open office hours every Thursday from 3 to 6. Some people just show up. Some people are surprised, and they just showed up to say, well, Chief, I just showed up. I didn't think you would really have me. They kind of came to test me. And when they were allowed in, they were so shocked. And but it's been great conversations, meeting with many community members. So I have an open door policy, and I just want to remind folks that our Deputy Chief Nick Sherwood also is going to start hosting, coffees with a cop with individuals that can't meet in the afternoons that may want to come in the morning and to meet with us. We work for our community, and we'll listen to our community, and if they have some great ideas and it works for us, and if it works within our budget, obviously that's always a factor because, we have to be realistic. We can't say we're going to do this and that when there's no money in the budget. So we're cautious of it. The one good thing is I do eat up a lot of my money where the officers are seizing money through asset forfeiture. I use this for the community events and things like this. So that $280,000 that they just seized, obviously won't see it tomorrow, and then we'll see it in the future. We won't see the whole thing, so I don't want to get everyone excited. but that's what I use it for. This is the stuff that we go out there, we do a great job, and we reinvest it into the community, and that's the goal moving forward. And so I'm always open to conversations and great ideas. Not that doesn't say that you're going to make me say yes or make me agree to anything, because there's always other factors, and I always talk to my command staff, but I will always listen to the community.
Well, I have a way of trying to convince people. No, but you know, but like I was saying today, I was in your office today, and I was mentioning to the individual I was with, I was like, can you believe out of all these years, this is the first time I've ever sat in that office? It is the first time, because every time I would call, I would get no response. I would never get
Right.
anything, because again, I was that thorn in people's sides, which I don't mind being. I hold that with honor. But because I just want people to be honest with me, and I want people to be straightforward, and I want to have a good conversation, because I want to make the city a better place. And I think that some people might take it the wrong way of what I'm trying to do. So
No, I wouldn't take it the wrong way.
I appreciate
I,
you coming on.
I appreciate people like you, because that's my goal. Meriden's always my home. It's home to my family. And when I do things within the community, I always have that in the back of my mind is I know they live there, and I want them to have a great quality of life. I want my nieces and nephews to grow up. We're I think fourth generation family now. We have four generations in the city of Meriden, which to me that means a lot. And I want them to basically be able to live, in peace, happy, just like everyone else, and know that they grew up there, and whether they stay there or they move on to another community, that's always their home, and then they're proud of Meriden. And I think that's what we all want. So I think we have that same common goal, and we just got to get there somehow together.
Yeah, when I moved here in 2006, people were telling me, "Oh, you're moving to Meriden. It's not a very safe place." And to me, I did, some research on it. I found that it was a very quiet place. And again, I choose to live in Meriden, which I think, for me, I think sometimes it means more than people who grew up here, because they probably see it a certain way and they're accustomed to it, and they may be nose deaf to certain things. But I choose to be here, and I choose to raise my family here, and I want them to stay here for the long run if they want to. And I think for me, it's always about public safety. So public safety is what drives your city. And that's why I get so irritated when people try to attack public safety, because without public safety, forget it. You have nothing but chaos. And then, you're never going to be able to grow from there. You're never going to prosper. And I think that's why I'm so irritated with City Hall, because everything that's coming out of there is putting a false narrative, one, against the citizens of Meriden, and two, the police department of Meriden. And as long as those false impressions are there, this city will never move forward. And so that's when I'll get off my soapbox on that, because that leads us into the political stuff. But I think you guys do a tremendous job. Every stat shows that. So it just blows my mind that people take you guys for granted. And I think that's ultimately what's happening.
No, I do appreciate that sentiment and your support. Obviously, there's many people that have come to me just wanting to offer support, and an appreciation to the officers that are working behind the scenes. A lot of people just come in to say, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job." I've seen more of that than anything else. And then the second thing I always hear about is traffic related complaints. But I listen to the community, and we established a traffic unit, and we hope to build on that. And that's me listening to the community and our staff, not just me, but my administrative staff. We're listening. We know what people want. We know the concerns. We know what the issues are. And our goals are to address that and make everyone satisfied in our services that we provide to the community.
Well, like I say, I think you guys do a great job. We have a couple questions out there for you.
Sure.
One is asking about, obviously, there's been a discussion up at the state about legalizing marijuana. What's your feeling on it?
Yeah, I stay away from that stuff. I used to be on the legislative committee. I haven't been a part of it for about a year and a half now. It's difficult because it's time consuming. I'm against any type of drug. You know, I don't want my kids around it. I don't want to be around it. Um, I'm against it. I know it leads to other things. You know, but if they legalize it, whatever the state does decides to do, I mean, that's what we enforce. We can't control our feelings. It's just okay. What are the laws in place, and how you know that's how we address things. We address things whether it's right by law or wrong by law. That's how we address things. And if they decide to say, okay, we're going to legalize it because we want revenue for tax base and whatever the case is, and that's fine. We'll adjust accordingly. But my feelings against it are against it because there's too many children that get involved with drugs early on and lead them to other drugs. And that's my concern is, you know, we're saying it's okay and we're showing our children it's okay. And that's going to lead to, I think, more issues down the road. But that's just my personal opinion. But obviously, we'll adjust and follow the law. Whatever the state decides, we'll follow, and that's bottom line.
Well, I agree with you. Now I'm going to make you pat yourself on the back because I heard you got an award today. So I'm going to make you pat yourself on the back and tell everybody what it is.
So I was set up by my staff. Before I left on vacation 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion about this award and giving it out to members within the department that were very deserving of it. And we kind of struggling with who to give it to within the agency. And I thought there's a lot of people that are deserving of it. And when I left, we were still in discussion and talking about it. And I got back and I talked to my deputy chief, or actually I talked to Lieutenant Burstein and asked him, "Hey, did you guys decide?" He's like, "Yeah, Deputy Chief Scully's working on it. He's gonna take care of it. He's all set." And they actually put me in for an award, which I'm very honored. One, I'm more honored about this because it came from within our staff. And you know, I like anyone else, you work hard for your staff, and you just hope that they appreciate it, and they work just as hard for you as you're working for them. And obviously, they appreciate it, my efforts for the year. It's a team effort. It's not just me, but this award is really a reflection on them because we had a tough year between the violence, pandemic, the police accountability, and that we held it together. And now we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and we came through it together. So to me, it's an honor, more so because it was from my own staff than someone from the outside. So to me, that says that we're all working together. We're all happy. Internally, that's why I say it's great.
Yeah, I think it definitely validates everything you've been doing when the people around you are the ones that are praising you and awarding you. So another question that came in, actually, where are we on our status on our SWAT vehicle? Is that still out of commission, that van?
No, the van is in commission, and obviously we have a armored vehicle. We don't have an armored vehicle, but there's one within the region.
North
If we
Haven,
needed an
correct?
armored vehicle, that is available to us.
Is that the North Haven one? Where's it's
That's the
stored?
north. Correct. Yep.
Okay. So is there any? What is if you guys could ask for one thing, what would it be? What are you guys? I know we had issues with squad cars years ago where we were losing, where we didn't have enough, or the ones we were using were really beat up. Are you guys up to date on having enough squad cars that are in commission?
So this year we've made great strides. We've replaced the administrative vehicles. We have 4 vehicles right now that are being worked on and being outfitted for police vehicles. The lights are being put on, the decals are being put on. But like anyone, everyone orders the vehicles at the same time because of the budget. So it's difficult. We've had these cars for several months now, but unfortunately, these organizations that outfit these cars are so busy with other cars that they've been tied up. But hopefully we'll have these 4 new cars here in the near future. We are working towards a new program, and I'll wait to release that. But with the new program that we're getting, we're going to get a number of new cars, and I think staff is going to be satisfied. You have to understand, cruisers are an officer's office. That's their office for 8 hours. sometimes they get it, they get in and basically go from call to call. Sometimes they don't even get a lunch break. And to me, it means a lot for them to have a little small office or small space where they're comfortable. It's clean, it's new, everything's working, operable. There's no functions or the AC's not working. No issues like that. So I think next year we'll be in better condition. We've been working hard to implement a new program for vehicles, and I think the officers will be satisfied. I think they're going to be excited about it. So that's the goal. I don't want to say it yet because nothing's been signed, but that's my biggest issue is the cruisers, and the second part is we got to give some TLC to the police department building. We got to give it some paint. The roof's leaking every now and then. We try to do small repairs. I mean, we got to invest in those sort of things. I think it's important. I think it's important for the officers to walk into a building that's nice, neat, well painted. It'll uplift them when they're down for whatever reason, whether it's the home life or issues at work or whatever the case is, or like 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, a month ago with that resolution, they were all upset. At least they could look forward to something when they're down.
Yeah, well, if they need anything, obviously, there's plenty of people in businesses in the city that are more than happy to help you guys out. So if you need anything, make sure you reach out to us. We're always here because I think we know. Well, I don't think I know. We know the great job you guys do out there on a daily basis, and we can't thank you enough.
I appreciate it, and thanks for having me, Joe. Thanks for having me tonight. This is important. I think it was important for our staff. I think I think the community also needs to hear the department side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was very important to have you on the show. I think people want to hear from you because I think at the end of the day we hear one side of what's going on, but we never really get an opportunity to hear from the chief himself. And again, I've worked with you on other projects, and you've been very open and you've been very transparent, and you're more than willing to join us to help get the word out there on what's going on in the city and within our police department. And I can't thank you enough. It's a breath of fresh air. Obviously, me and the former chief never really got along, even though I did have the opportunity to sit down with him a couple months ago. And he thanked, not only, which was surprising because he thanked me for the show, but for going, people need to go to bat for the police department. And everyone who's watching this, I think, understands that the police department is under attack. I know, most police officers don't want to say anything because, obviously the political side of it, but that's why it's even more important for myself and for the audience to make sure we're telling everyone about the great things that you guys do, because some of the things that you talked about tonight do not get out there. You only hear the negative things, or you hear what city officials want people to hear. And I think they're doing a disservice not only to the community but to the police department as a whole. So I want to make sure you take this message back to your officers. We love them. The city supports them, and we will do everything we can to support you guys. All you have to do is ask. And again, I thank you for your time tonight. It was extremely important, and it just makes me be able to sleep better tonight knowing that they were able to hear from you.
I appreciate it, and have a good night.
You too, sir. Thank you so much for
Take
joining
care.
us. Everyone, Chief Rosado from the Meriden Police Department, the Great Meriden Police Department. So, guys, thank you, Chief.
Take care.
So, guys, there you have it. We finally had the opportunity for the chief to come in. If you have any additional questions, always feel free to send them to straighttalkatjv@gmail.com, and we will get them over to the police chief. Anything we haven't talked about tonight that you guys might have, I know you guys, the comments have been going crazy. So I thank you for being part of the chat group. You could also make sure any questions you could leave there as well. We will get this out to as many people as we possibly can. But again, the police department can only do so much. Chief Rosado could only do so much. It's up for each and every one of us out here to make sure that we're helping them out, get this message out, and not let our city leaders demonize them and make them look like, they're doing crazy things out there and they're hurting people. And this use of force committee, again, is ridiculous. We've talked about it extensively, so I don't want to reiterate everything we've talked about, but this is far from over. This is far from over in the eyes of City Hall. And it's going to take us to defend our police department because they are deserving of it. And they don't get the praise that they need and deserve. So we'll leave it at that tonight. Again, I'd like to thank Meriden's Police Chief, Roberto Rosado, for joining us tonight. And I thank each and every one of you, as always, for being here. I love each and every one of you. I love our Meriden Police Department. I think they do a tremendous job. I know they do a tremendous job. Every statistic shows that. So until we meet again on Sunday, we will not have a show tomorrow. We will have a show again on Sunday. We'll recap some of the questions that came in, and we'll move on to other things going on in the state and the city, especially when we're going to talk about the marijuana, because that is probably going to pass at some point over the next couple of days. So we'll talk about that if it does, along with the sports gambling, I believe, is going to pass this year. So we got a lot to talk about on Sunday. So until then, guys, I love you, love each other, and go out there, praise. If you see a cop, say thank you for your service. They do a tremendous job here in the city of Meriden, and they should be praised for it. So until we meet again, God bless you, and God bless the Meriden Police Department, and God bless this amazing country of ours. So until again, God bless you, and I will see you later.